This is Tim Singer from Dead Guy and Bitter Branches, and you're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode. And on the show this week, we have the one, the only, Pat Shannon of All Else Failed and Hold Down the Ocean. Pat was one of the very first interviews we did on this show. And there's a lot going on with Pat. We've got All Else Failed, the new Fragments LP. This contains Wouldn't Wish This on Anyone, the EP, Cradles and Graves, the 7-inch, and a track from a split they did a while back, all on vinyl for the very first time. That's coming out this week. Pat's other band, Hold Down the Ocean, just put out a new LP called Equidistant. We talk all about those records. We talk about a lot of great All Else Failed history. We talk about a band I was in with Pat a while ago called Crash of 64. That was formed after the breakup of All Else Failed, and we were around for a year or two. A lot of great stories in this one, a lot of great conversation. It was really fun to have Pat back on the show. That's coming up. We also have our Artist Spotlight interview of the month with Ben Bakker of In Transit. I met Ben down in Florida while I was out playing some shows with the Darling Fire last year, and his band In Transit is awesome. They just put out a new EP called Illusionary, and we talk all about that and get to know Ben. And that's all coming up shortly, but first, I need your help. And you know what I'm going to ask for. We need Apple Podcast reviews, and we need a lot of them. We've got to break 300. It is on my list of things to do this year, and I will get it done no matter what it takes. We've got 235 reviews currently, so if you listen to the show on an iPhone, open up the podcast app, search The New Scene, click on that, scroll down a bit, and hit the 5-star button. You can also write a review, and if you write a review, I'll read it at the end of the show. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at New Scene Pod, and we have shirts for sale at Death Wish Inc. Just search The New Scene over at deathwishinc.com. Also, don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. There's an Iodine Showcase gig this week, August 1st, in Medford, Massachusetts. No Man, Love Letter, Corrode, and Teardrops are all playing the show. Piebald and Hot Rod Circuit have 2 gigs in California this October. Audio Karate has tour dates with Mest in September. No Man has summer tour dates in July and August. Dead Bars have tour dates out west in August. And don't forget, we've got 2 excellent new LPs out there for you to listen to and purchase. Her Head's on Fire, Strange Desires, out right now, and Love Letter, Everyone Wants Something Beautiful, out right now. Sign up for the Iodine newsletter. You'll find out about everything first. And for all of these tour dates, go follow Iodine Recordings on Instagram at Iodine Recordings. You'll get all the information there. And don't forget to support our sponsor for the month of July. You know them. You know who it is. It's Equal Vision Records. And here's some updates from the label. Nova Charisma just released a new single called Stolen From Each Other. That's from their upcoming LP called Metropolitan, and their record release show is August 9th at the Roxy in Los Angeles. Armor for Sleep just released a new single called In Another Dream. That's available on all streaming services right now. Yellow Card just released a cover of Jimmy Eat World's Hear You Me. Gideon have tour dates in July and August. The new EP from Common Sage called Nostos Algos. That's out right now. Go check it out. And This Day Forward have 3 gigs coming up. It's their first shows since 2003. Tickets are still available for August 23rd at Underground Arts in Philadelphia and August 25th at Bowery Ballroom in New York City. For more updates, head to equalvision.com or follow them on Instagram at equalvision. Okay, so check back in with me after the conversation with Pat. We'll do a quick wrap-up, we'll check in, but right now, we are going to speak to Pat Shannon of All Else Failed. Enjoy. All right. We are here now with Pat Shannon. Pat, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again, Keith. And I have to open with a question for you. I'm going to turn the tables
I'm
on
ready.
you.
This has never happened before where someone has started with a question for me. So, you know what, Pat? Go for it. What is it?
Am I the first 3-time guest on the new scene?
You might be the first 3-time guest, but there's been people who've been on the show like 6 or 7 times.
Okay, as you had some like guest hosts and whatnot, but I'm the first 3-time interview, maybe.
Oh,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, you might be.
There you go. Yeah, I was episode number 3, which it's very funny. I was just down at the brewery with some of my partners, and I told them I had the jet to come up here and do this, and they were like, "Yo, let me check out the website." So I had them pull it up, and I was like, "Yeah, I was guest. I think I was like number 2 or 3," and we went back. And it was so funny. We started listening to it, and it was March. I think it dropped March 5th of 2020. And like everything we're talking about is like pre-pandemic, and just like pandemic wasn't even in our minds whatsoever. And it's like, it's like felt like such different times, but it was hilarious. But that was kind of apropos because we were also trying to start our brewery right during the pandemic, which was a nightmare. So
it's so weird to think about, isn't it?
It's almost, I don't know, man. It's so bizarre. It like in some like corners, it feels like it just never even happened. You know what I mean? Or maybe it was so bad that people just sort of collectively like, chopped it out of their memory banks or whatever. But yeah, it's just funny. Like, I almost can't relate to a pre-pandemic world at this point. Like hearing you and I talk, yeah. Like we were talking, and it was when we met that day in Philly. You had that hotel room, and we were just talking. If anybody's interested, this is episode 3. You can go all the way back. First, like and leave a comment and leave a good review for Keith as we do.
Yes,
this.
Pat is a real one because he showed up.
I did in person.
We did 2 interviews in one day. First one with Mike Shaw. Second one with Pat. It was a grueling, like 10-hour day, and Pat was there for us in the very beginning, us getting this podcast started. And it's so weird to think of. I think about that. Like, what if the pandemic never happened? Would this podcast be what it is? Would I still be doing it? Would I be in a band?
I mean,
who knows what the hell would be?
Was that your intention to have live interviews or like?
That's all I was going to do.
Really?
No remote.
Wow. Well, that changed real quick. Yeah. Man, that's. I mean, and I thought that was great, and I vaguely remember talking to you about that. It's like, yeah, you just get something in person, but hey, then the whole world went remote, and look, it's what it is, and I guess there's ups and downs to it, but. Yeah, it was probably heading that way anyway. Like everybody just being so compartmentalized and remote and everything, that was probably coming anyway. But I think the pandemic certainly accelerated it for sure.
I want to be here because now this podcast has given me a lot of purpose, and I'm in a band again, which I don't think would have happened if it weren't for the podcast and then me being in the Darling Fire last year and reigniting that fire.
Dude,
so
that's so awesome, man. And first off, I just want you to know, everybody from down here, our little corner of the world over here, like Mike and all that, like, we're just so proud of you for just doing this. Like my partners, you met Ordsy and Jared and Jordan, my partners before, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And even when we were just going through the Spotify to see, like, to get back to see, like, hey, was I like the second or third guest? I don't remember. And going through, it's like, holy shit, there's like 300 episodes in this or whatever. What are you up to? Like 250 or it's outrageous.
236 will be dropping on Monday.
Nice. That's so fantastic. And yeah, it's great. My buddy Jordan, he's sort of my partner in crime at the brewery. He's a younger guy, and I was like, yeah, he's had dudes from Tool on. So it's great. It's so funny. I'm always trying to like be like, yo, man, yeah. But it's I appreciate you having me on, and like you said, you were kind enough to call me a real one. I certainly think you're a real one, man. From back in the day, it was such a good from the day you came to my apartment to buy a Sans amp off a centrifuge. We were thick as thieves. So it's good stuff, man. I'm just over the moon to talk to you again.
I love it. Well, welcome back. And Pat, now I need to ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing today?
Today, I'm doing pretty good. We're announcing these All Else Failed shows. We're going to do a little quick All Else Failed run in September, which I'm super, super stoked about. Primarily because we're playing the church again, which we haven't played the church in gosh, 100 years. It was so funny. I was thinking about it the other night. I was trying to be like, when was the last time we played the church? And I think it was back when Hellfest got canceled in 2006. If you
Wow.
remember that and all the shenanigans around that. And that was the year 2006. Like Luke had already gotten home. You know what we have to get Luke. Like he had already moved, but we had to get him back home. Or he might have been like hiking on the Appalachian Trail or something. Whatever it was, we had to go through a whole thing to get Luke home for Hellfest. And Luke was already home, and like it was days before. It wasn't like Hellfest got canceled with any real degree of notice. It was maybe like the day before. It was wild. And, obviously it was 2006, so it's not like the internet didn't exist, but like social media wasn't quite what it was. So like word just sort of trickled out a little bit. And I feel like the guys in Philly, like R5, Sean, and Joe Hardcore and all those guys who we love dearly, sort of sprung into action and basically made Philadelphia like the epicenter for bands that, for whatever reason, because of the cancellation, had to find a place to play. And for us, that was super convenient, obviously, being
So
where
you
we
were
are.
part of that, because I remember going
yep.
to the Lifetime 108 show.
So you were probably at the Troc then. We played the church show that day, and it was like, as everything's happening and people are finding out, like shows getting announced like with almost literal 24-hour or 48-hour notice, whatever it was. And we were like, well, what's going to happen? What are these? It was All Else Failed, Turmoil, and Coalesce at the church. And I was like,
what?
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that'll work.
That happened?
Yeah, that happened. Absolutely, man. That was fantastic. That was and that was like an early-ish show. I want to say that was maybe like a 5 p.m. show, because then everybody was like jetting that show immediately to go over to the Troc and catch Lifetime.
Oh, it was Starlight Ballroom.
Oh, Starlight Ballroom. Was it?
Yeah.
I thought that was the Troc for some reason. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. There
could have been another show at the Troc too. But...
Right, exactly. It was just mayhem. But that weekend was just mayhem. And I do remember like Sean and Joe posting stuff about like, hey, like, we're going to do this in Philadelphia now, basically. And that's how This Is Hardcore was born. Like that was the first like unofficial year, I call it, of This Is Hardcore. I don't know how Joe feels about saying that, but I think 2007 was the first actual This Is Hardcore, but 2006 was like sort of just an impromptu mishmash of shows thrown together on literal days' notice. And those guys are lifers and they're pros and they're just the best, and they made it happen for everybody. And for us, it was like, God damn it. Like, we got Luke home and we don't get out much anymore. And it was like pre the first breakup. So it was just so deflating to find out that, what happened with Hellfest happened. And we love those guys too. And I don't really, cast aspersions on anybody. I don't know what happened with any of that. But, it was just so disappointing. It was like, well, we're here and we don't get out much. So what can we do? And it ended up working out so much better than we could have thought. So it was a great weekend.
I'm glad you brought this up, because this is kind of the era that I wanted to start with, because I'm a little unclear on. All right. So you said this is before the first All Else Failed breakup. Mm-hmm. All right, So you play this show. This is like 07-ish.
I want to say 06. I would say August of 06 or maybe July of 06, somewhere in there. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So All Else Failed breaks up around that time. All right, because we got started with talking about Crash of 64, I want to say in 08.
Yeah, that sounds
And All
right.
Else Failed was not active at that point, right?
All Else Failed was not active at that point. So there was sort of like a sad end of All Else Failed after, and it's funny, I guess it talking about it in years now, it seems like it was fast, but I guess it took a while. Like This Never Happened came out in like 04. Like our whole goal was just to tour that record, and just for whatever reason, I don't know, we just couldn't get anybody's ear as far as like getting on any really good, like to me, I was like, man, this is on Abacus Records. We're a subsidiary of Century Media. It's like, can't we get on, I don't know, whatever, like the God Forbid tour or whatever, you know what I mean? I'm just saying that. I'm just pulling that out of my ass.
Throw them on an In Flames tour.
Right, exactly. I don't know. And it's like, obviously we don't really sound like those bands, but I don't know. I felt like we were doing well as a band. We had just gotten kind of pieced the lineup back together, and like '05, like our whole mindset was like all of '05, all of '06 we're touring, and just nothing happened. Just no, we couldn't book anything. And I don't know if I don't know what the reason for it was. I really don't know. We probably should have had management. I probably shouldn't have been trying to do everything myself, but that wasn't a choice. You know what I mean? I would have loved somebody to sort of take over the reins for me. It just was what it was. I don't really know how or why it went down that way, but we just couldn't really get anything going as far as any like, and we would play Philly and it would be fine. You know what I mean? But we're so much more popular now, Keith, than we were when we were actually doing it the first time. It's outrageous. And it's just funny. And we take it with a grain of salt now and we laugh about it now. And it's awesome now. But, you know,
it's weird. Like I had Ryan, the singer guitar player of Yellow Card, on this show. And, you know, I just assumed they were an MTV band coasting and super popular and all this stuff. And he said before the pandemic, like, people didn't really want to see them anymore, and they were broke. I think they were broken up, like they couldn't even continue anymore or something like that. And then all of a sudden, after the pandemic, they had the biggest resurgence of their popularity ever. And I'm talking even more than when they were on MTV in the beginning. And it just made me think of that when you were saying that, because it's so weird. Like why not in '06 when you have this amazing record out and you're ready to just tour nonstop for 2 years? Why not then and why now? And well, there is a few reasons I'm sure that you'll tell us.
I'm going to give you two right off the bat, and we can fast forward right to the more positive time frame of things, which was when we first got back together in 2011.
Before you do that,
okay,
why did you break up in '06? When was it? What happened?
So we finally, like, things were not going great, and we finally got that record out, and we got that video out, To Whom It May Concern, and you know, we were on Headbangers Ball. I was like, woo, you know what I mean? And that was like, we knew essentially that meant really nothing in the grand scheme of things, but it was fun to be like, okay, you know, the record is out, that video dropped, like I think the record came out on the following Tuesday, and that video was out on the Saturday or whatever it was. But it all sort of coincided at once, and there was like positive energy, and we're like, okay, all right, and now we have a lineup, and we're gonna go, because the lineup that toured that record, I mean, it was always me, Luke, and Steve, but we had some interchanging parts. God, I don't know. There was 3 different drummers on the record, and then a guy that wasn't even on the record came with us, and they're all great dudes. I love them all. But it was just, we finally felt like we got a lineup together. Dave Davies was in that lineup, so he was there too. I mean, Dave, it's funny. I always refer to Dave as our new guitar player. He's been in the band since 2000. I was like, yeah, this is our new guitar player, Dave. So I mean, Dave is he's been putting up with us for so long. But it sort of you know, revolving door of drummers. Finally got a lineup. Jimmy Rhodes came up and he just absolutely crushed it. I remember the first time he played with us, I blinked every time he hit the snare drum. I was like, that's the guy, man. He's just a hitter and a player, and just wasn't fazed by the minor trickiness that we have that's inherent in our DNA. But we finally got ready to tour. We finally, you know, sort of really committed our lives to being out for like a year or you know, I think the record came out in late '04, and it was like, yeah, all of '05 we're going to be out there. And then the only thing that got booked was 6 weeks with Ed Gein, who are great, our buds from Syracuse. And you know, we were talking to the label, we were talking to our booking guy, and no one really had like us to, like our best interests in heart. And I don't mean that anybody was like trying to rip us off or anything like that, but just like nobody looked at us and was like, that's the band I believe in, and I'm gonna like go to battle for them. You know what I mean? Like it was just like, it felt like a bunch of people kind of looking around being like why is the stuff that's happening for this band not happening for us? And nobody really having a good answer for it, and everybody just sort of shrugging their shoulders. You know what I mean? That's kind of how it felt. So we're out on that first tour, and literally I never actually even saw that video play on Headbangers Ball. As I mentioned, I think it played like 3 times, but we were on tour. Like, so we weren't like, I don't know where we were. We were driving on those Saturday nights or Sunday nights or whatever the hell it was. But it just felt like, during that tour, that first tour was a 6-week tour with Ed Gein, and it was, you know, the coasts were fine. We did really well on the East Coast and really well on the West Coast, but the middle of the country was not that kind to us. And it was just, and there was just like I remember there was like one sort of like possible opportunity percolating for when we got home. But again, our whole thought was like, yo, we have to stay out. There's no like going home and sitting around. Like, we don't have jobs. We're not, we're doing this or we're not. And it finally got to like, there was a week left in that tour, and whatever was coming up had all fallen apart. And we all just kind of looked at each other. And I do remember who said it first, but it doesn't matter. It could have been any one of us. Was just like, when we get home, I'm like basically begging for my old job back, and that's that. And we can continue as a part-time band, but this is not working. And the rest of us agreed to that, and we continued that way. But that's just, man, when you're young and intense like that, you just sort of feel like you're all in or all out, you know what I mean? And I think Luke kind of got that vibe. So he had always had designs to move to the West Coast at some point in his life, and just decided to do it. And that was the final nail. So it was sort of like a gradual downshift to like, hey, maybe we can exist sort of part-time. And then Luke just being like, guys, I'm leaving. So
wow. That's got to be crushing, right? Because you're out there, you're like, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to do this for the next year or two. And then just, nope.
Crushing. Yeah. I mean, and look, I don't know what we could have done differently. We could have probably been better at networking on our own, or I don't really know what, if anything, we did wrong, but nobody really did anything right, I guess, because it was just, I guess maybe we were hard to deal with in some ways, or I don't really know. I'm not, it's funny, I'm sort of at a loss. We referred to that era as the dark ages, and that's not at all because of the guys that were involved with us. And honestly, if anything, it's a bigger bummer. I feel terrible about that, because Jimmy wanted to, he had just joined the band and he wanted to keep going. I do feel like we told him when he joined, it's like, yo, man, if this specific cycle doesn't work out, we might be done. And he was like, I want to go for it anyway. Like, he had the enthusiasm that we needed, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we had just been so through it that we just couldn't find it anymore. And I feel like we let him down, and I'm sure Dave too, he's a little younger than us, and he was, just super passionate about the band. And it basically came down to, the three guys who are, the three guys that I feel comfortable in saying are like, I don't want to say shot callers. That sounds kind of egotistical, but I mean, All Else Failed is essentially the brainchild of me, Luke, and Steve. And the three of us were just worn, you know what I mean? And we had guys in key positions that were stoked and wanted to like push forward, but we were just like, guys, we can't do another Basement tour. We can't do another. It's stuff we had done all of our lives, and now we're getting on 28, 29 and not making any money. And not that was ever why we did it, but you know what I mean? It beats you down to come home, and have nothing really to show for it, and have nothing lined up to back it up. You know what I mean? So it was really dark, really tough period. We squeezed out like 3 songs, and one of them was a banger. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we put all of our anger into that, into 173, which is like one of the shining moments of the band. And that was really so much Jimmy. And I'm so happy that he like, was in the band in that period, and just like gave his soul to that song. And like, I remember driving to Baltimore, I think it was just me and him, worked out like the initial framework of that song, and then we sort of brought it back and everybody fleshed it out together. But I think he and I kind of sort of like kickstarted that one, but he had all of the ideas about like the weird off-timey changes in the middle, and it was such, I was like, man, that's like top 5 All Else Fail track of all time. And that was just Jimmy's one shining moment. I'm so happy he had it with us, and we ended up falling out a little bit when we got back together, but we're tight as could be right now. So I'm super stoked.
That's good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're buds now. That's all stuff in the past. And I'm so happy, that he was able to, I'm happy that we were able to stay functional long enough for him to contribute what he did to that song.
Yeah, because those 3 songs are some of the best on Good Enough for the Girls We Roll With. Those first 3.
Yeah. I mean, well, especially 173. The other 2 we don't we don't mess with too much. I mean, they're okay, but 173 is just an out of left field banger, and I mean, I don't know. We'll probably open with it in September. I don't know. It's a great song, and I couldn't thank Jimmy enough for it. And it's weird, man. When we had fallen out, it really does bum me out. It takes a lot out of me when, doing this kind of thing. You know me, you know how bands I'm in seem to go through a lot of members, and that's and that's
well, you're the way you are. It's just like I think if it's not working logistically or stylistically or just the chops you need, I think you're pretty quick to make a change, and I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily.
Right. Actually, I could probably work on my delivery, I guess, but
yeah.
But I just feel like, well, let's not. First off, there's some sort of self-deprecating angle to it because I never really understood why anybody was all really that upset. I was like, come on, like I'm of meager talents. Don't get so upset that I want to play with somebody other than you. You know what I mean? Like, but then I step back and I do realize, we had a cool thing going, and to not get asked back, especially when we did get back together and we didn't ask Jimmy to be the drummer. That was sort of the what really got him heated at me specifically. And that's fine. Like I'm that guy to take it from the team, but sometimes I'm like, hey, well, that was a group decision. Why am I the guy getting shit on for it? You know what I mean? But
well, here's the question. Did you go back and say like, hey, we're going to go with so-and-so, or did he just find out?
No, it was, we told him, but it was complicated because initially we thought it was just going to be a reunion to do some shows, specifically the This Is Hardcore shows, getting back into the more recent era.
Right. That's like 2011.
2011, right? But then, us, man, like if I'm in again, I'm all in. So Steve and I were like, hey, well, how about we write, and how about we do this? And Jimmy lives in DC and we're up here. And it was just, well, at the time, especially, we weren't very savvy with, sending files or doing anything via the internet. It might be a different story now than then. But at the time we were like, hey, we're not getting back together just to do these shows. We have riffs, what I mean? We want to do and it turned into an EP, and it turned into what I think is one of the best All Else Failed releases, period, which is the Wouldn't Wish This on Anyone EP. And it just became clear. It's like, hey, Jimmy's talking about coming up once a month and it's not his fault. It's what we were talking about. It's what the plan was. It wasn't anybody's real fault, but it was just dawned on Steve and I that if we're going to write and try to push this into something that can keep going and isn't just a couple shows here and there, or This Is Hardcore and then whatever, we were like, hey, well, let's, if we're going to write, we have to find a drummer who's around here so we can play like twice a week, and Joe Brown, who played with us, sporadically, he was with us way back, like after Archetype, after, in the early 2000s, he toured with us and then he left and then he came back and recorded some of the drums on This Never Happened. But he's a local to us, lives about 20 minutes from me. So we reached out to him and he came in and we just hit it right back off. And, we were like 3 songs deep before I was like, oh God, this sucks. We have to tell Jimmy that we're not gonna, and I feel dreadful about it because in today's day and age, like I feel like there will be a kid listening to this just thinking I'm the biggest dick in the world because it's like, well, you just send them the files, man. But it just wasn't how we operated at the time. And
that wasn't so much a thing back
right.
then.
And I'm just
and definitely not for me. I don't know. Maybe people were on that tip, but I wasn't.
Dude,
and I know you guys weren't.
I'm still hesitant to it. I still don't particularly like it.
I still haven't done it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do it, but begrudgingly, you know what I mean? I'd still rather just get into a room and just shred with people, So
that's how I have to do it. Yeah.
So it basically, we decided, Steve and I, that we were going to play with Joe instead of Jimmy, and Jimmy was very upset about it, as he should have been. I mean, it was just but like you said, that's one of the things I do when I I'm like, hey, this is just how it has to be. I'm quick to do it. And sometimes that leaves people not too happy with me, and that's a bummer. But and I don't mean to be flippant about it. It really is a bummer. It crushes my soul that doing music has cost me friendships because I feel that in certain situations I have to be sort of cold and calculating. But that's
the way it is.
But then I flip it around and be like, well, it literally, you and I aren't probably talking right now if I wasn't like that guy. So, that's how it is. So, but
I know Jimmy's cool now,
Jimmy
and
is
you
the
are too, right?
man.
Because
Jimmy is the
Jimmy's
man.
been on the show.
Yeah,
He
he's
had
the
nice
man.
things to say.
Dude, he is the man. He is the man. And
Yeah.
I don't see him as much as I wish I did, but when we do talk and text and hang out, it's nothing but love.
Have you heard Burial Waves?
I have, yeah, and that's Jimmy's band with Dave.
It's so good.
Yeah, so good. Dave Davies is in that band, and I'm a huge supporter, and just I love everything Jimmy does, and couldn't thank him enough for his time in the band. And I guess that's sort of what I was envisioning is like, hey, like your time in the band is, it felt like we operate in eras, but I guess maybe for somebody who really committed so much of his life to come up and really want to push that band. Like for us, I was like, well, that was a dark time for the band. Well, I'm drawing on history back to 1995. Jimmy doesn't give a shit about that. He just got here in 2004. So, you know what I mean? It was sort of like, I felt badly that we were just like, hell, time to wrap it up. Sorry that you happen to be the guy going down with the ship. You know what I mean? But, and we probably could have been better at just being more sympathetic to what those guys went through to do our band. And, I never was. So Jimmy, if you're listening, we've already hashed all this out. We're buds now. And we're good.
So I want to talk to you about, now, while All Else Failed was broken up, you and I started Crash of 64.
We did. Yep.
This was so I don't know if I told you this. When I bought that pedal from you in 06, I was in a band called Paper Tiger. It was the first band I was ever in. I played bass, and I wanted to buy the Sans Amp pedal because that was the pedal at the time. And someone told me that you were in All Else Failed. I forget, someone on the Centrifuge.
I think you told me this story before, and you tried to front like you didn't know who we were.
Yeah, no. I was such a fan of the band. I played it cool, right? So I went to the house to buy the pedal, and we were talking. And then you mentioned that you were in a band, and I was like, oh, what band? And you were like, all Else Failed, but I already knew.
All right.
So I was like playing it cool, and I was like, oh, I love that band. Yeah. So like but I didn't say like, oh, I know already,
Well, that's cool. It may have made it awkward. Who knows? But yeah, I feel like I remember you. And I don't know if I feel like maybe I'm reinventing history, but I feel like that was like 06, 07. And
when I tried out for an early version of Murder Texas.
Right, you did. And with Paul.
But then I think it just didn't happen for a while.
And we sort of went a weird direction with that. And those riffs are still around. I'm still trying to push that one song into something we do.
It's a good song.
Yeah, it's really good. You know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel that when you and I sort of kept that rap going because we were like, hey, we're super into like the early 90s Quicksand, Handsome vibe. And like, I don't know, it felt like that was sort of novel at the time. Like in 06, 07, I felt like I was the only guy that really wanted to do a Quicksandy type band. And obviously not, but whatever, 5 years later, that
no one was talking about that.
That whole revival, and with Quicksand themselves, and of course everybody else that sounds an awful lot like them, came back with a vengeance. But I felt that was a novel idea. It's like, yo, let's do a band that sounds like Quicksand. It's like, oh my god, well, everybody does that now. But
no one was doing that, and I was super into post-hardcore
right
at the time. Handsome. I wanted to be in a band that sounded exactly like Handsome.
Yeah, and we
Quicksand.
We might have lifted some of those riffs directly if you listen back, but it's great.
I'll never forget the first one of I was practicing with a different rhythm section. And none of them ended up in the band. And I remember I wrote a song that sounded like exactly whatever track 5 is on the Handsome record.
Right.
I can't remember the name of it, but I wrote a song that just really ripped that off. And I remember playing it, and I was like, "What do you think, guys?" And the bass player just kind of looked at me and shrugged his shoulders. And I was like, well, you're not going to be in the band.
Well, being in bands is tough, man. I mean, if just in general, it's why we still do All Else Failed. Number one, because if you're lucky enough to be around long enough that you have a language musically with the people you're doing it with. Like, that's just the hardest thing to establish, to like,
It is.
to have a frame of reference and a language. And we're so lucky to have that in All Else Failed, that that's not, I don't find it confining at all. I find it to be the opposite of that. I find it to be like, we can basically do whatever we want, but right now we all sort of know how we all feel. So we'll, you know what I mean? Like, right now, the vibe of All Else Failed is X. So we're shooting for X, and we can't explain what X is, but if you're part of it, you get it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
we have that language, luckily, and we had it pretty early on, especially with me and Steve. Just musically, Steve and I couldn't have been lucky enough to have found like a musical soulmate like Steve.
Yeah, because I was listening. We'll get here, but I was listening to the final Hold Down the Ocean record, Equidistant, and I was like, "This is these guys. Like, this is them. Like, this is what they do."
Yeah. Well. First off, I don't. It's sort of got out there that it's the last, and I just bristle at anything ever being so definitive. You know what I mean? I don't know that it is.
Your Instagram post said goodbye.
Well.
That's not sort of out there. That's
goodbye.
Out there.
I said, it started with hello, I said hello and goodbye. Yeah, I mean, it's that band as a whole, man. I will have to come back for interview number 4.
No, listen, we're going to get there, but okay. I want to talk about Crash of 64 real quick. Yes. All right. So Pat and I started this band. We got Paul, who was in All Else Failed at one point.
Yep.
He was like
original
the first drummer.
The first drummer of All Else Failed. Yep.
We got him to play drums.
Monster drummer. Such a great drummer. Such a great guy.
All right, so it was me and Pat on guitars, and Pat had some kind of weird signal chain running into a bass rig.
Yeah.
And then it was Paul drumming, and then it was Mike
Cummings
on vocals, and then our friend Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
It was Kevin McGovern who joined on bass, and we played, and we put out an 4-song EP.
Yep.
And it was very post-hardcore, like...
Yeah.
We wanted to be in a band that sounded exactly like Quicksand.
We did.
And it kind of became something else.
It did. It went a different direction. And but again, of that time frame, it's like, it wasn't, I don't know if it was that calculated, but it was also, it put it this way. Yes, it became something else. And my idea for it was, because if you remember, we cycled through a bunch of members first, and we couldn't find really a consistent lineup, but you and I had really basically written all the riffs. So I was just like, listen, let's just record these songs with the best singer I know and the best drummer I know. And the best singer is my man Mike, whose office I sit in as we speak. And the best drummer that I know, who was available, let's put it that way, available to practice. I mean, I know some players, but they're far away. But I'll put Paul right up there with any of them. I think Paul's one of the best drummers like on the planet as we speak. Like
One Take Paul, isn't that what we called him?
And he gets that vibe, man. I can't really explain it when I just turn my back and I don't even have to look at him, and he like knows where I'm going. He just knows exactly. I don't know. I don't want to speak too effusively about anybody to make it sound like I'm shitting on anybody else, if you know what I'm saying. But Paul just, man, like there's just something, like he just knows where the groove has to drop. He knows it's like, like I'm going to pull back. I'm going to like go into that breakdown on like, we're going to be behind the beat on that to make it even a little heavier. I can't explain it. Like he just has it. He knows exactly how to drop the beat where you want it to be. And I think that's because, again, frame of reference, musical language, we came up on the same shit. We loved the same shit. And he just knew exactly what Steve and I were writing. So, I mean, really all of Most Bitter Season was Steve and I just making noise. Figuring out how to play. Like I could play, but I wasn't writing crazy metal riffs. You know what I mean? I was really just figuring out, and Paul took him to another level, and then we went down and recorded with Nick Rotundo in Clay Creek, and he took it to another level. And I jokingly say, but I'm serious, Most Bitter Season sounded way better than it should have sounded. We were way more popular quicker than we should have been. We were basically still kids making noise at that point, but that record was pretty cool. So
Crash of 64, I think we played for like a year.
yeah, it was about a year, maybe two.
And we started, it was 09. Oh, and in early 2010, we started recording that new EP.
Yes.
And then we went with a different engineer.
Yep.
And we didn't like the way it sounded.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, like, I was a complete mess. I was in this relationship that I was obsessed with, and she pulled the plug because I was such a mess and it just wasn't working. And then I think you were having your own relationship thing going on at the same time.
Yeah, none of us.
Right?
No, I don't think any of us were in a great headspace. But it was also, we were all like early 30s. I don't. That's a tough time of life, I think, for a lot of people. And it just, I just sort of ran out of gas on it. I had this vision for it, and we got like 80% of the way to the vision, and I was never at any point like specifically mad at you or anything, but like everybody knew kind of what you were going through, and like I said, like, so to get the songs accomplished, I was like, let's get the best drummer, let's get the best singer. And they stuck around and actually joined the band, Mike and Paul. But each of those guys were like, what is going on here? And yeah, like, and then I think you moved to New York not too long after that.
No. Wait. Yeah. Well, here's the question. Now, I just had Colin from This Day Forward and Circus Survive on the show, and he was talking about the end of Circus Survive and how it just kind of, he called it a slow fade. Like it wasn't a breakup. It wasn't, it's not like everyone necessarily sat down and planned everything. Mm-hmm. It just, he called it a slow fade. Like whatever was working wasn't working anymore. Communication ceased, and that was it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of what happened to Crash of 64. Like, because I remember texting you and being like, hey, are we going to practice again? Or are we going to finish the record? And you were like, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And then it just kind of stop. But did you and Mike ever talk?
No.
Did you and Paul ever? Did anyone? There must have been some conversation to say like, I'm not going to do this anymore.
I swear to God, there was never anything of that. And that's not speaking well of myself, because that's just poor communication, and I should have done better in that space.
So you're telling me not even you and Mike said like, yeah, we're not going to do this?
Never. So Mike has so many other things going on, and Mike, like, Backwoods was just on fire at the time. So, like basically if our train got derailed, he was just going to hop back on that other train. You know what I mean? So he didn't, and he was fairly open about that to start with. You know what I mean? And then Paul, I don't know. Like, I don't remember ever having a conversation with Paul about it. I mean, look, we're talking about.
I think after, if we want to really get into it, we kicked out our bass player, Kevin.
Yeah.
or I don't remember why or exactly how it happened.
Because I'm in the band and I'm just, a terrible person.
Yeah. And then Steve got involved.
Yeah.
And I think when that happened, some of the dynamic kind of fell off.
For sure. But I mean, I don't even think Steve got involved. I think he came up and played like one practice. Yeah. I mean, and it was just, I think everybody just realized it was kind of done, and that's fine. I don't know. I don't know what, I wish I had a better answer. I wish, because we worked on it for like 2 years and put out 4 songs, but I think there might come a point where you're like, look, we kind of did a little bit of what we came here to do. We had some other really good songs. I wish we finished that stuff, but I don't know. I'm sure there's a million bands out there that had a million unrealized songs. You know what I mean? And
it's like, here's how I look at it. Now, I was such a mess at the time because I like that relationship I was in was actually kind of stupid. Like, we had nothing in common, but I was just obsessed with it because like that was me at the time. I was obsessed with like outside things to try to give me some kind of purpose on the inside, right?
Right.
So she ended the relationship. I was like acting crazy about it, and then I was sinking further into like alcoholism and addiction. And that's when I kind of let go and just started doing it all the time.
Right.
And then the band was like the only other thing.
Right.
And the band, like the band was good, but it wasn't like it wasn't like make or break. Like we didn't get on great shows.
Right.
We didn't.
Right,
It wasn't like it wasn't like exactly the sound I wanted.
Right.
Like it.
Right.
It. So it's not like I look back on it like God damn. It's like
I feel like I feel like I said to somebody, or maybe I can't remember if it was specifically about Crash or if it was about a later project. It might have actually been about a later project, but I think it applies to Crash. It's like I felt like I know what I need to do to make this what I want to be, what I want it to be, but I don't know if I have the energy to do it anymore. You know what I mean? I feel like if we just practiced 4 times a week, you know what I mean? It's like the ideas are right on the cusp, but they're not all the way there yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or
and I wanted it to be more like Renee Hartfeld Memorial
for sure. Yep.
But it was like more riffy.
Yeah, and I was aware of that like kind of influence, and I felt like I don't know, I felt like we had a pretty good blend going, but I just felt like I felt like the way you feel about it. It was just like it was 85% of the way there, but it wasn't 100% of the way there. So once we, that's all well and good when you're putting it together, but once you start hitting the first couple roadblocks, then if it's not something that you're super, super passionate about, it's going to be more susceptible to falling apart. And I think it just went that way. And I don't think any of us were great communicators at that point, especially me. And like you said, we were both going through problems at the time. So,
and I just wanted to be in a band. Like I couldn't see that it wasn't like maybe exactly what I wanted to be doing.
Right.
So I just needed to be doing something.
We were pretty hot though, man. There's the one video of us playing the track one. There's a couple of videos floating around YouTube if anybody cares to look for them. And it's like, yo, we pulled it off. We were really, really good. But and then also, I don't know. It was just weird coming out of. So I wasn't even coming out of All Else Failed. We were coming out of Murder Texas, which was the first band I did after All Else Failed, which also sort of prematurely fell apart. So I just started to get a vibe that I was just going through this cycle of like playing with guys, getting my idea most of the way there, but not all the way there, and then having something sort of just torpedo it and have it fall apart. So it was a depressing era, I guess, musically speaking, and but also, that's I guess I was 32, 33. I was drinking way, way, way too much, and going through a lot of that stuff myself, and yeah.
Wow, I was only 29.
What year are we talking about? 08 again?
08, 09. I think I turned 28 or 29 in 2010.
Yeah, it was crazy time. And to anybody going through all that stuff at this time in your life, I put it this way, being 30 has a lot more in common with being 20 than it does with being 40. You know what I mean?
Oh God. That's so true.
You know what I mean? When you're 30, you still feel like you're a 20-year-old. You still feel like you should be out there every night partying and doing whatever it is that you view as part of the big thing. But like getting to be 40 and God, as we approach old age, I'm 48 now. And I would never, want to be in the 20s or 30s again. And there was fun times for sure, but just the fun times are always sort of underscored by sadness. You know what I mean? There was like a sadness, like I can't really explain that, but it just felt like if I wasn't, and maybe it's like a drama thing or something. I don't know. I never felt like I was super into that scene, but maybe I was. I don't know. Like if there wasn't some like crisis going on, it didn't feel like I was really alive. I don't know. It's crazy.
I can relate to that. I would like to do all that again if I could do it, but have money. I just I hated being broke.
I think it would
and
be
just
worse
stuck
with money.
inside.
I think I would have done worse if I had
I'd be
unlimited
dead.
money.
Yeah.
Who knows? But so anyway, so let's move on. So we get back in 11. All Is Failed after Crash sort of simmers down, and 2011 comes. We get to the point where we're talking about playing This Is Hardcore, and we get back together and do the EP, which I guess at this point we should mention is getting reissued by our buds at Translation Loss.
Yes, everyone. All Else Failed Fragments. The LP is out there. Is it out or is it pre-order?
It is. Well, as we speak, it's pre-order, but by the time this comes out, I think it will be out. It's July 26th, I think, is the date. It's very shortly, end of July.
Yeah, so the couple days after it'll be out, and the Fragments LP includes the Wouldn't Wish This on Anyone EP, the Cradles and Graves 7-inch, which is amazing, and there's a track from a split you did that's on there too.
Yes, yep. So it's just 8 songs, and it's really the entirety of the output that we did in sort of a brief span from 2011 to 2015 or 16 or so, when we were sort of figuring out how to do it bi-coastally. And really, I would be remiss to say this, if I don't say this, excuse me, that, when we were talking previously about like why couldn't we get the ball rolling after this never happened, which is, I think a lot of people would say is one of the better things that we ever did, and has a lot of the songs that we're most known for on it, because people didn't, like, no outsider like took a particular interest into us. And that changed in 2011 because of Joe Hardcore from This Is Hardcore and Sonny Singh from Hate 56. Absolutely, without question, those two guys, without them, this whole second chapter doesn't even exist, because Joe let it be known to me all through the breakup that whenever we wanted to come back, we had an open invite to This Is Hardcore. And This Is Hardcore was, starting to, like I said, it started, I think, properly in 07, 08, 09, 10. They were like great shows. And for whatever reason, 11 felt right for us. So we picked that one to come back. And then Sonny happened to catch us. Sonny was just getting Hate 56 to be, it was in its infancy at the time. But he just fell in love with us at that show. And ever since that show, just started following us around. Anytime we played anywhere, he was there. And
I always know I'm going to see him at one of your shows.
We played in January, and
I was there.
You were there.
He was there.
You were there. So we played the Polish Club in Phoenixville, PA, on I guess a Friday night, and he was there. But we didn't really get to talk. Like, he filmed it, but and it was just kind of a crazy night, and I didn't really get to bro down. And I was like, I didn't even really get to talk to Sonny. I'm not sure if he's going to be there. So we're setting up at Vitus on the Saturday, and like a minute before we play, I see Sonny rolling. I'm like, yeah, that's fantastic. yeah. It's like, but he's always just been such a great supporter of ours, and honestly, it's those two guys. It's Joe and Sonny. Without them, without them, we're probably not even talking right now, because those guys just. Joe specifically always just said, it's like, man, I remember him saying, it's like, I just don't understand why people didn't get you. Like, I don't understand it. You're always welcome on my shows. Because he would do like, before This Is Hardcore, he was doing, random shows here and there, and he would always reach out.
You played Philafunk Live in 2006.
Yep.
Now, I stopped going to hardcore shows for a long time after that show, because I hadn't been to a show in a long time, and I was with my friend, and we loved All Else Failed. Mm-hmm. And we're like, they're playing. They haven't played in a long time. Let's go to this. And we're like, awesome. And then we went, and it was like the same old shit. Like, one guy was like patrolling the pit,
right?
And his dance was to just punch people.
That one,
and like standing on the edge of the pit. And then we left the show, and we're like, dude, it's the same old shit. Like, I'm not going to any more shows.
Well, that one was a weird, violent one, I think, if I remember correctly. And that was.
And didn't Luke's brother get into something with someone? Like,
if I remember, I know Luke's brother, his band played the show, and I don't remember if it was during their set or our set or what it was. But
something happened.
It was just a weird night. It felt like that night was on the verge of a fight all night for some reason. But also, we knew we were breaking up, so we were just like, that was almost par for the mood. You know what I mean? We were just like, whatever, like, we didn't really know or care. And I don't put any of that on Joe. Joe was a sweetheart that night and took care of us that night. And
I don't even remember seeing him there.
He was putting out fires for the most part, if I remember. Like, but I don't think it was even. I don't know. I think it was just a weird time where it's a hardcore show in Philly was going to be dangerous for whatever reason in that time frame. And
I guess that was still going on then.
Yeah. But I don't think it was anything like. I think I'll put it this way. I don't think it was like specific to that night. I think that's just kind of how it was. And It wasn't really the note we wanted to go out on, but I don't blame anybody for it, and we weren't.
I blame that giant guy who was punching people and kicking people.
I don't know who that was.
I don't know who it was, but whoever that giant guy was.
But
it's
we
fault.
probably should have been a little more in tune what was going on at our own show, but we were just out of it. It was like I was just so freaking bummed that we literally made the what was it, the Metallica ripoff T-shirt that said the like world tour, and it was just the Philly show and the New York show, because we were just, I don't know, we were trying to attack it with a self-deprecating sense of humor that we didn't really give a shit that we were breaking up, but we were all fucking miserable that we were breaking up. You know what I mean? Like we were just fronting so badly that we didn't care, and that whole experience in that show and just that era that you're talking about, that was sort of all encompassed in what I still refer to as like our dark era of All Is Failed, where we just didn't, no one could really see eye to eye on anything to start with, which is why we were in the situation we were in, breaking up. But then as we tried to continue the band as like this part-time thing, or up to and including the last shows, like nobody could really get on the same page. So there was just a lot of a prevailing sense of, I'm done with this.
Yeah. When things got back together in 2011 and you have support from This Is Hardcore and you have support from Sonny and things start picking up more, did you feel like you're finally getting your due? Did the band feel like that?
A little bit. I always struggled with that, just in general, to feel like we were owed, and it was like, oh, we deserve respect, or I don't know, we get or don't get what we deserve. You know what I mean? Like we earn or don't earn the respect of our peers or the respect of the kids or whatever,
Yeah, but like compared, like let's take 2011, 2012 and compare that to 2006, where you're ready, or I'm sorry, 2005, whenever that was, when you're ready to take over the world. And
literally no comparison. I mean, we would play in Philadelphia for like 28 people, and now we play in Philadelphia and it's a good show, and
yeah.
And I don't know if that's just tastes caught up with what we do, or absence makes the heart grow fond, or you know what I mean? I don't know what it is. But it was sort of when we all got really cool with it was when it was like, well, and that is literally the line of one of those songs is on the reissue is, what fun could we hope to be if we weren't a tragedy? And it's just sort of like laughing at like, well, of course it didn't work out for us. You know what I mean? Like, why would it have worked out for us? So, yeah. And I don't begrudge, like, it's fun to get into a place where it doesn't cause me any anxiety anymore or anything. It's like that band is, it is literally at this point, like my favorite musical thing to do. And when I look back on everything I've ever done musically, it's obviously one that probably touched the most people or the most people, got in tune with. But as it exists now, we're here for like the fishing trip, basically. You know what I mean? We're so stoked to do this like run of 3 dates, because it's going to be the 6 of us plus whichever knuckleheads want to jump in the van with us and do a quick loop around the Northeast. And you know what I mean? Like when I say fishing trip, I mean just like, we're so stoked to hang out with each other that it almost doesn't matter that we're this band or playing these shows. We just want to, it's like almost like we can't break up because we like each other too much, which is bizarre, but it's the opposite.
Well, the pressure's off now because it's like, it doesn't need to be this full-time world touring thing. We're older. We can do it when it makes sense. We can do it when we want to, right?
And for what it's worth, though, we do make way more money now than we ever did too. So every now and again, I do some math, and I'm like, damn. but
here's an important question.
Yes,
I was on Spotify, and I was listening to All Else Failed again because you're coming on the show, and I saw the show. The show is on there. The church show is on there.
Yeah.
I was like, they're playing the church, and I checked your Instagram, and I didn't see anything, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, it all just got announced like within the past 2 days, but like we're not even on top of it enough to like be like, hey, everything has to drop all at once. You know what I mean? Like it just sort of trickles out, but it gets the job done. So all right, I want to talk about more All Else Failed, but before we do that,
Hold Down the Ocean.
Yes.
Your other band. Now, this started around 2014?
This was, I believe, 2015, and this was Hold Down the Ocean. I still have a lot of love for, and like I said, I bristle at the notion that anything is ever done completely, but we're just taking some time off from it because it was a bear to get this record out. It just took a lot out of us. And
Why?
it was all sort of written like just post COVID, and for whatever reason, I can't explain it. Just everything in that band just took forever. It just felt like, and it wasn't, I don't think, because we were being like overly like nitpicky about stuff. I don't feel that way, but maybe that was part of it. But it just felt like, I don't know. I can't really explain it. It just felt like it took forever. There was a lineup change. There was a few situations, but it just ended up becoming its own, like, it became more work to be like, oh my God, we got to finish this record. So we're talking about, like, it took like 3 years to do this record. And essentially, as great as I think it's a great record, but if something is just not clicking on that, and I take my blame for it for sure, you start to check out after a little bit, and I feel like maybe I got there. I think maybe some of my bandmates got there as well, where it was just like, hey, we're just showing up to get this done, and then we need a break. So I think that break, some people think that break is forever, and some people hope that it's not forever. I'm hopeful that we can patch it up someday, but there's no anger. I love all three of those guys. I hope they all love me.
Who's still left? It's you and Steve and who?
So me, Steve, Kyle, Dan. We had split with Joe prior to that, and that was a point of sadness in my life as well. Here's Hold Down the Ocean in a nutshell. The first 5 years, the whole reason it came together was after All Else Failed. If we were going to do All Else Failed without Luke, I wanted to sort of dive into like what they now call the slow core world of just singer songwriter type stuff. And Steve's all about like the post rock stuff, the stuff you love. And we were each going to sort of help each other out with each other's project. And then we were just like, well, let's just do a band. You know what I mean? Let's just do a band that mixes them, I guess. And for the first 5 years, that worked really well, and there was no drama. And then for the second 5 years, it was nothing but drama and just sort of just fell apart. And can't really explain why that all went down the way it went down, but it did. And I don't have any anger about it to anybody that was ever involved. And I hope nobody in it has a great deal of anger towards me. I'm still hopeful we play together again. But like I said to you the other day, I mean, Steve and I, if you put the two bands together, have been playing music together for like 45 years or whatever. So it's like, it's like, yeah, maybe we could just use a break, man. It's okay. It's not, it's weird how passionately we take music. It's like, if we don't see eye to eye on something on music, musically, we can't be friends. It's like, no, what are we talking about? Like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, but by the same token, though, I understand. I take it so seriously that I understand why why that thought sort of like permeates. But then you just have to be sensible about things. It's just like, hey.
I'm like you. Like, it's all in service. If I'm in a band, everything is in service of the band.
Right.
Like,
right.
If like, I would kick someone out if it wasn't working, but I'll be like, hey, we can still be friends, but you are not going to work in this band.
Right.
Then now they might not feel that way at all. They might be pissed off. If I get kicked out of a band and I think it's justified, I might be able to be like, okay, I can't be in this band, but we can still be friends.
Right.
Like I can kind of compartmentalize it and accept it, or maybe not. It just depends, but not everybody can do that.
Yeah, I don't know. And it is a source of sadness in my life because, and I do feel that exactly what you said, everything in service of the band. It's like, hey, if we're going to do this, we have to take it seriously, and we have to like move it in a certain direction. And if somebody isn't coming with us in that direction, then let's just confront it now before later. But sometimes I also wonder if I've been quick to act on things because that's just like my reflexive impulse. You know what I mean? So I don't know. And at the end of the day, I feel badly for some of the ways things have gone down in both bands. Really all three. If you throw Crash in there, I do feel badly for having poor communication at the end of that. I definitely feel badly for some of the stuff that went down and All Else Failed, because it was, I took it upon myself to be the guy that just whose only mission was to keep the train moving forward. You know what I mean? And
Yeah. I remember after Crash broke up, like Murder Texas got back together again. I'm like, what? He's with his old girlfriend again? Like,
well,
Mike's
that
with
band,
Backwoods, Pat's with Murder Texas. Like, what am I going to do?
Right,
what the fuck?
Right. Well, Murder Texas just played the other day too. We played at the brewery for the first time in like 20 years. It was funny.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah, it's so weird how seriously we take this. But at the end of the day, it still should be something that we do for enjoyment. But if you feel that there's somebody there that maybe for whatever reason you just feel that isn't, if there's a problem on the horizon, my thing is just get to the horizon then. You know what I mean? Like, what's everybody wasting their time for? Just run right to the problem and confront it. But I can't say for sure that in that being my mindset that maybe I didn't create some problems. Like, I think that would definitely be fair to put on me, and I take that for sure.
We forgive you, Pat.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean,
I forgive you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not mad about I'm not mad about any Crash stuff or anything like that. Like, it's old news at this point.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like I said, I do feel badly for the way certain situations have gone down, but I also realize that overall, I feel like I pushed a band that really didn't have a lot of people's ear for a long period of time, and got us to a point where now, I always really, really believed in every one of us. I believed in the music and everything. And now when All Else Failed does something, it's notable. We're not the biggest band in the world, but we have our little corner of the world that appreciates us. And
oh yeah,
I'm stoked that it's like, hey, I didn't make every decision 100% right, but more often than not, I made the decision that needed to be made. And, I think that helped us get to where we are.
Bands need a person like you.
I think so. And
for better or worse, they do.
Yeah. I mean, Luke jokingly called me the president for 15 years or 20 years. And then recently I was like, hey, like when we were setting this particular run up, I was like, man, I can't really deal with it right now. I have a lot of stuff going on at the brewery. Can you do it? And so he was like, for sure. How, I mean, and it's fine. But then immediately he went away for like a 2-week vacation. So I had to do most of it anyway. But it's just like, God damn it. So, but it's all good. There's no, I try not to hold on to any sort of, certainly any grudges out of those decisions. But again, it's kind of, I don't know if everybody sees me that way. And I feel badly. If anybody out there, text me, reach out to Keith. Keith will give you my number. Text me if I owe you an apology, and I'll
email me at newscenepod@iodinerecords.com, and I'll give you Pat's direct number.
I swear I'm not a tyrant. I was not a bad guy to be in a band with. I don't.
No, you're not. You're not. I don't remember any problems, but look, then again, I put in the work. Like I with Crash of 64,
sure. Yeah.
I sat down, I practiced those songs every day.
Yeah, for sure.
I wrote leads. I like 100%. Really put in work to make sure that I was like doing my part.
Yeah, 100%. No, that was a great band, and you were definitely the thing in that band was never musical on anybody's part. I think we were, like you said, it wasn't 100% what our vision was, but we were like on the cusp of sort of creating something different. And, it's like I said, we got like 80% of the way there, 85% of the way there, and it kind of dried up, but it was, it was a time for you and I, for sure. We were, we were in our feels at that time, I guess, is the way you would go. But I have to tell you one story before it's over. You did come up in conversation the other day, and
this is going to be good.
I was thinking about what we were going to talk about as I was driving home last night, and I was like, well, we're probably going to talk about the All Else Failed shows coming up, and how stoked I am that we're playing the church again, and how I don't think we've played the church since the Coalesce show I had mentioned to you in 2006. And then I was like, well, it's coincidental that I have tickets to see Cave In and Coalesce at the church like 2 weeks after the show we're doing there. So I was like, oh, that all comes, church is doing heavy, the church didn't do heavy shows for like 10 years or whatever. And now they're doing, some Sunday matinees and some really good stuff. And I was like, so I was going to mention that, and that made me think of Cave In, and that made me think of, I brought you up in conversation. So Mike opened an acoustic set for Adam McGrath and Stephen Brodsky up at a brewery in New Jersey.
Oh, right.
Yes. And me and Rylan roadied for Mike. We just, took the road trip up, and so we're all hanging out in, like, I guess the green room type area. And I don't know what got into me, man. I had met Stephen Brodsky before, but I marked out so poorly and so badly. I punished the Cave In guys so bad that Mike was just like, had his face in his palm. I don't know what it was like. It was like a dream when you're like, what is happening? What are you doing? You know what I mean? Like trying to like stop doing something dumb in a dream, but you can't stop it. It's like, what am I doing? I'm just talking nonsense. I mean, I might have had a couple of the brewery's higher alcohol beers, but I don't know. I don't know if I did or not. Unsubstantiated reports. But no, I just absolutely punished. But you came up in conversation. I don't know why I brought you up. I was like, I heard your podcast with my friend Keith. I'm friends with that guy. It was so bad.
Did they seem happy about that? Did they say, we remember him?
They definitely had great things to say about your podcast. And they both seem to have had a good time on the podcast. And later in that night, I talked them into setting up their merch table, which I worked for them. I worked their merch table, and and they did very well that night. So I felt like I redeemed myself by convincing them to set up their table. So that was small redemption, but
they're legends. Like when I had them on the podcast, mm-hmm. I wanted it to go well so badly because that's the interview I wanted to do the most at the time.
For sure.
Because like I didn't know the whole story, and I was dying to ask them about like the major label and coming back and just all this stuff that I had never heard talked about really before.
Right.
So I had to like fight to not do what you did.
No, it was, I absolutely marked out and just went straight to punishment zone. I can't even believe I did it. Driving home, I was like, it wasn't that bad, right? And I don't think it was that. I think, hopefully, I don't know. Maybe it was worse. Who knows? It was just funny that you came up in that when I was struggling for something to talk about after feeling like I completely marked out like a Swiftie or something. I felt like
if there's anyone to do it with, it's them.
Oh,
it's
for
them,
sure,
though.
for sure. Yeah. And I did tell them that too. I was like, "Yo, man, I meet a lot of people. I've never, this has never happened to me before." It was so embarrassing. My man Rylan came up with this. He was just like, "Dude, fucking get yourself together. What's happening?" I was like, I felt, you know what it was? I was like Chris Farley with Paul McCartney, but it was fucking. It was funny.
Remember when you wrote Joy Opposites?
Oh, dude, you said the song. So they asked me like what song I would like them to play that night. And I was like, how about Joy Opposites? And then they didn't play it. And then like back in the green room, I think it was Adam was like, oh yeah, we didn't play that one. I was like, I know
that's a pretty bass heavy song, isn't it?
I mean, they played some stuff off that record. I mean, really, it was a pretty career spanning. And the wild thing about when they do what they do, with Steven on acoustic and Adam plays, his whole. It looks like their rig. I'm sure it's tweaked for the setting, but man, you feel like you see a Cave In show when you see those two guys play together. You feel like it's different, but it doesn't feel less impactful. Those songs are just perfect, and their tones are perfect, and their gear is like they absolutely deliver. And I hope I didn't bum their night out too badly that night.
Nah, I doubt it. Honestly, that probably happens to them a lot.
I will say I only woke up in the middle of the night having anxiety dreams about it like 3 or 4 times, so it wasn't so bad. No.
Before we wind down here, I want to talk about All Else Failed some more.
Sure.
Now, first of all, we have wait, before I get to that, okay. That show you played, that was in January? The one at St. Vitus?
February. No, yeah, you're
When
right.
was
Yeah,
that?
no, early January. Early January.
Okay.
You're right.
All right, so I went to that and I was like, look, I'm old now. Like, I'm not going to like really sing along or do anything. Like, I can't do it anymore, you know? And I was like, and I'm not going to feel energized. Like, it's not going to happen. As soon as you started playing, it was like I was possessed. And I don't like go crazy and mosh or anything like that, but I was like jumping around and like singing along, and it was so much fun.
Yeah.
Like, I was so happy to see you guys, and the next day I was like so happy, and that never happens to me. It's not like I'm miserable all the time, but I'm not like happy all the time. It's just kind of like, all right, another day, let's work. Right. But that next day I was so happy, and it was like a feeling that I don't get very often. So I was just like so stoked
Well,
about that.
I mean, we love St. Vitus so much. And actually, what is the status of it? Are they back up yet, or what is?
No.
Oh, Christ Almighty!
No, I still don't know. But it's been a while now,
It
so
is.
I hope.
I mean, it wasn't long after we played there. It was only a couple of weeks, I think, after. So it was like February or March. Yeah, that venue to me is like, I mean, that place in the church are like just stick out in my head of venues where you just feel like something special and different is going on. And that night specifically, the night before we had played in Phoenixville, which is a suburb like half an hour from Philly, where we played a lot back in the day, and that was just like felt like a homecoming show, and with just a nutso show. But like it, as always, it goes. It usually seems that like New York is on the second of the night, so that like the Philly show we start with, and it's just mayhem and guitars are getting thrown around and strings are getting broken and people are out of tune. So it feels like that's the more energetic show. But then New York, we actually like deliver the set a little more precisely, and I feel like we did that at Vitus. I mean, it was still energetic, still crazy. We're still going for it, but we were just like sort of sit back and be like, okay, this is how the song is supposed to go. And I feel like I haven't listened to it, but Luke was saying that he just listens to the audio from the Hate 5-6 video, just like when he's jogging and shit, because he's like, this is how we were supposed to sound. This is as good as like quality of like, this is like we played perfectly. Like that's what the set is supposed to sound like. So
I go back and I went live for like the first song or two, and I go back and watch it on my phone, and I get like all charged up again.
Yeah, man. So it's that venue, it's that city, like, you know, basically we're a 2-city band, man. It's Philly and New York City. Those are the only cities that really ever felt us, I guess.
The only cities that matter anyway.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way. I got to be honest. Got to feel that way. But
I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah, let's get right to it here. But that night was just such a special night. You know, to play there and be able to do that set and do it as well as I felt like we showed up. And I'm going to tell you something, Courtney. Talk about marking out on a band. I've just been obsessed with this band, High Vis. I don't know if you're a High Vis fan at all. Love that band, love that record, love everything they're about. And right before we were about to hop up and go on stage, I went and used the bathroom in the basement. And I saw that right at the toilet, as if you were sitting on the toilet where you would have tagged it. I guess somebody from that band gave the High Vis tag. And I was like, oh, that's like, I don't know. I felt like I was getting tag teamed in, you know what I mean? I was like, all right, like, you know what I mean? It was just vibes, man. That place just carried vibes. And you see all the pictures that they have up of like crazy old shows that have been there. And it's just like, I mean, it's the new CBGBs in my opinion. And hopefully it will be again when it hopefully gets all of its situations resolved. Hopefully that does happen. I mean, that would just be a straight up tragedy to lose that place, man. That would be just a disgusting to lose that venue.
Right. Yeah, I really hope whatever's going on that they get it worked out. But they're doing like St. Vitus Presents shows at a bunch of venues up here, so they're still involved. So hopefully, you know, they just get that place open back again soon, because I love it.
Yeah, it would be. It felt like it's just a fucking awesome place to play, and like, and hey, none of us should ever take any good venue for granted. You know what I mean? For sure.
Exactly.
Because obviously this kind of thing can happen, and it's not an easy thing to do a venue and stay on the right side of all the dumb shit you have to do to be a venue.
I want to remind everybody we've got some all else failed LP reissues out there that you need to pick up. We've got A Most Bitter Season, we've got Archetype, we've got This Never Happened, and we've got Fragments, the LP, which again contains Wouldn't Wish This on Anyone EP, which is one of my favorites, Cradles and Graves 7-inch, which you heard a clip of earlier, and which is one of my favorites, and a split track that you had out. So, Pat, we want everybody to pick these up, right? I mean, these are absolute classics, and I don't say that lightly. This is a band I still go back and listen to and go see whenever I can, and the songs really get me charged up like no other band.
Oh, I appreciate all those kind words, Keith. Hey, those all thanks to Drew and Translation Loss for really just approaching us with the vision of this several year process of putting these records back out. And this is the culmination of that. We always kind of knew that we wanted to get this last group of songs properly mixed and mastered and released on vinyl for some of them for the first time. And I mean, Drew and Translation Loss just killed it for us. I mean, so easy to work with and accommodating, and couldn't be happier with the end result on every single one of them. And who knows? Maybe, hopefully, we'll be working with him on possibly some new stuff in the future. That idea has just started to get kicked around, so we'll see where that goes. Nothing to say one way or the other about that right now, but.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask about. Remember, there was like kind of a fight that broke out last time you guys were on the air, and we were, and everyone really wanted Luke to finish the songs, and he
Yes.
said he promised he was going to. Any update on that?
No, that song is not finished. But there is talk about doing some other new stuff, and that song still rules. I actually listened to it the other day when we were sort of going through some old files and stuff. But no, Luke never did. Actually, no, I feel badly. I take that back. He did finish it, but we sort of, by that point, the ship had sailed on sort of that particular time frame of like, let's do new stuff. And so it was just like, all right, let's put it down. I take that back. He did finish it. But now it's sort of on the back burner, and we're looking at some new stuff.
I see. So there will be new music at some point.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, we'll put out Luke's version of that song. I'm playing. It was good. It's just that song's a banger, but it became, I think, maybe its legend preceded itself or whatever. I don't know. It was.
Is it one of those things where like you just work on it too long and then you're like,
yeah, you know what? It's not totally dissimilar from what happened to the last Ocean record. It's like I still love the songs, I still love the music, I still love everything about it. But when you get to a certain point of just sort of beating your head against the wall about something, you start to question what it is and its value, which is a shame because in some instances certain pieces need that attention, I guess. But in this just mindset that we're in now, it was just like, hey, maybe we took the bi-coastal file sharing version of All Else Failed as far as we could take it. Let's actually get in a room and bash around a little bit. So that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to actually try to maybe write together a little bit within the next 6 months or so, and hopefully maybe put out something next year. That's the rough plan. Excellent.
I'm looking forward to that. And when are the shows?
So we are playing Baltimore on Friday, September 20th. We are playing Syracuse on Saturday, September 21st. And we're playing the First Unitarian Church. We're playing a matinee show with our buds in Boy Sets Fire on Sunday, September 22nd.
Amazing.
Yep. And I think you could probably pretty easily find links for tickets and whatnot, but I know Philly HCshows.com, as in PhillyHardcoreShows.com, for tickets to the Philly show. Come on out. It's the church. You got to be there. If you've never been to the First Unitarian Church in Philadelphia, you are missing out.
Yeah, you have to go.
Yes.
You have to go. And finally, we want people to hear Equidistant, the new LP from Hold Down the Ocean.
From Hold Down the Ocean. That's on all of the usual suspects as far as streaming services go. Also on our Bandcamp. No physical release for it yet because we were just sort of the opinion that, why jam it up any further if we're sort of going on this hiatus. So we figured just to get it out into the world and maybe that'll shake something and make something happen. But super proud of that record and proud of the guys that were involved in making it. And there's no things start, things end. I have no bad feelings and no hard feelings to anybody in it. It's just time to put that down for a little while and see what All Else Failed's up to.
Did we communicate with the rest of the band that the hiatus was happening? Are we learning from past mistakes?
I think one member might say no. No. Yes, we did. Probably not as well as we should have. It's still tough, man. It's still interpersonal relationships and communication. You know what it's like? It's like that Adam Sandler sketch on Saturday Night Live where he's a travel agent and he's like, if you're you and you're here and you go to a fancy place, you're still you. If you're sad here, you're still going to be sad there. It's like, if you struggle with communication in your real life, being in a band, you know what I mean? Like, I'm still going to struggle with communication in a band. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know why.
No, you know what? Jonah from Far was on the show again recently, and he said, we get into music because we can't communicate to begin with.
Right.
And then, then we start a band.
Yeah.
So you have 5 people together who can't communicate.
Right. What a brilliant point, man. That's actually
when he said that, it blew my mind.
That is, like literally, man, I couldn't say it better than that. That's literally like, I feel that on such a deep level. It's like, look, expressing myself never came easily to start with. That's why we do this. You know what I mean? And man, that's wow. That's huge. That's outrageous wisdom. That's fantastic.
This is who we are.
Yeah, it is what it is. And I don't know, like if you're a lifer and you stick around a long time, there's sadly there might be relationships in your wake that look, I don't think anybody hates me, but I think my relationship with a lot of people could be a lot cooler than it is. And that's on me. And I take that, but it's like you said, it's look, I was never really great. I was an awkward 13-year-old. That's why I grabbed a guitar. You know what I mean? And now I'm an awkward 48-year-old. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really know. At some point you just accept that that's who you are, and you start, you can't beat yourself up too much about it because that could go on forever. You know what I mean? Just sort of have to accept that that's who you are and move on.
That's it. So, well, Pat, listen, I appreciate you. It's always good to talk to you. It's always good to see you. And I hope I can make one of those All Else Failed shows. But listen, we're going to be in touch. I appreciate you. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Keith. Awesome to talk to you again, as always.
And there you have it. Pat Shannon. Really great to have Pat back on the show. Such a joy to talk to. You heard it when I told him, like, whenever I see All Else Failed, it's almost like a family reunion. I'm just happy afterwards, like nothing else. Always look forward to seeing that band. I want to make that Philly matinee show if I can in September. I'm going to have to get in touch with Tommy and ask him if he wants to go to that. I'm going to see. I'm glad All Else Failed is still doing excellent things. And, Pat has been a good friend over the years. He's been a good musical mentor. Crash of 64 was the second band I was ever in, and the first band ever where I played guitar. And I learned a lot from him. And he's been a good mentor. He's been a good friend over the years. It's always a pleasure to see him, whether he's doing All Else Failed or Hold Down the Ocean, another great band. So make sure you check out Equidistant, or if we're just hanging out. I've known him for a long time now, and it was just great to have him back on the show. So thank you, Pat. All right, so make sure you stick around, because right now we are going to speak to Ben Bakker of In Transit. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Ben Bakker. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, it's great to have you here, Ben. Ben, where exactly you live in? No, wait, I know that you live in Florida. Ben, where exactly in Florida do you live? Where was I with you?
We are in the Tampa Bay area. I'm from a town called Bradenton. So if you're looking at Tampa Bay, we're like on the bottom of the Bay side. So St. Pete, Tampa is directly above us, and we're directly below it.
You live right near water, if I remember correctly. Yes.
I do. We live on the river just outside of the bay. We love it. I'm just staring out my window at the water now. It's great.
Your house is super nice. The location is super nice. Is it dangerous at all with like the weather? Is there ever any hurricane stuff going on?
Actually, I've lived in Florida my whole life, and I've been through so many hurricanes, and never really batted an eye until this last big one that came through, Ian. Like that was probably the first time in my adult life that I was worried. We saw some crazy stuff flying by the windows. We had some damage to our house. It was wild. It was definitely wild, but we made it through just fine, except we lost some light fixtures and some ceiling fans on the patio and stuff like that.
Well, I'm glad everything is okay. And listen, we're here to talk about your band, In Transit. And In Transit just put out an excellent EP called Illusionary earlier this year in April. So Ben, tell us about In Transit. When does it get started? How does it get started?
In Transit started probably about 5 years ago. Myself and some friends of mine who were in a post-hardcore band called Rumors of War in the early 2000s were asked to do a reunion show. And we decided, why not? It had been probably 13 years since we played together. So we did. And, as you kind of hear with a lot of reunions, when it wrapped up and the few shows that we had slated to do wrapped up, we kind of said, this still feels really good and I don't really want to stop. So, some of us that still had, the family and kids commitments and really could only do the reunion shows stepped away. But then when we brought in some replacement members, we're like, you know what, let's let the old band be. Great memories. Let's put it to bed. Like all of our musical tastes had expanded and our skills had expanded. So we're like, let's start all over. New band, new name, new tunes, new concept, new style. And that's kind of what it was born out of. Like, we've all got a blend of musical taste, but I think, we kind of all agree on some foundations, right? Like we're in that jar filled with Jawbox and Fugazi and hot water music, but we also love The Cure and we love Minus the Bear and old prog bands like Yes. And this band was kind of just an attempt at trying to fuse all of that together.
Yeah, it really comes through. There's a great mix of things, the prog sound, the melodic hardcore, and the other elements you're talking about. And I like it a lot. The band you were talking about that reunited, what was your life like back in the day? Like, were you one of those guys out on the road all the time touring in that band or a bunch of other bands? Like, what was going on with you?
We were in our early 20s, and I think we were in that spot where we didn't fully commit. And maybe that was a regret. Like, that last step you take as a band where you're like, am I really ready to be, to go for it? Like to be homeless for the next 9 months and to get into a van and just sleep on floors and come back and have no job. We were doing really, really well in Florida. I mean, we were playing all over Florida. We were playing, great venues, great crowds, doing really well. But we just, I don't think we went past that just because, I don't personally, I didn't have the guts to step out and like say, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for broke.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I never took that step. I did a couple national tours with a friend's band, like selling merch, but I was never in a band and went out and did that. And I wonder if I would have. I don't know, but the opportunity never really came up. I would be in a local band and it would usually break up before we even got to that point. So it just didn't come up. But what year was that around when you were doing that?
That would have been 2001 to 2005, I think. And, looking back on it, I looking back on it now with wisdom, I totally would have done it. Like, looking back on your life, like what's a year of being homeless or sleeping on the floor? Like, to all my friends that did have the guts to do it and went on tours, the stories they came back with, the experiences they came back with, I'm like, man, I wish I would have had the guts to do it.
Yeah, the way I was living back then, I was practically homeless anyway. So
Yeah, right. So was I.
why not go and tour?
Might as well just finish it up, you know?
So wait, 2001, 2002, we're talking like prime South Florida metalcore days, right? Poison the Well,
Yeah.
Evergreen Terrace,
Yep.
A whole bunch of other bands.
Under Oath was exploding.
Yeah. Did you play with all them?
No, I think the biggest one we played with was we ended up opening for the Academy out on the waterfront at St. Pete in Vinoy Park. That was a great experience. It was the first time, being on tour buses and having the lanyards. It was a great experience.
What kind of, well, I should say, how did you get introduced to this music and this world?
Man, it would have been 1994. And I was, at the time, I was really into Toad the Wet Sprocket and Stone Temple Pilots and all that stuff back then. And I remember hanging out and meeting some new friends, and they played NoFX's White Trash, Two Hebes and a Bean. And Johnny Appleseed came on, and Please Play This Song on the Radio came on. And I'm like, what is this? Like, this is amazing. It stopped me in my tracks. And I think within 3 weeks of that, Green Day's Dookie came out.
Yes.
And there you go. That was the end of it,
Yeah. Yeah, for people around our age, I think Dookie is a very important album. For me, it got lumped into the whole alternative boom. Like, I got a Stone Temple Pilots CD and a Green Day CD and a couple others all around the same time. But that was a lot of people our age. That was their first introduction to punk rock.
Oh, and it was a flood. I mean, I think in 6 months, I had gotten Bad Religion, Stranger Than Fiction came out. The Offspring came out. Just so much good punk just exploded that year. So immediately I was like, I was already a musician, but I was kind of a little bit more of an indie college rock type musician, and I made the shift over to punk. And we had just an incredible music scene. In fact, a lot of the members from Hot Water Music are from Bradenton and Sarasota. Well, they're all originally from Bradenton and Sarasota. They just formed in Gainesville, and they were all part of the music scene too. We had a ton of great bands just supporting each other. I mean that all the way through the 2000s to 2005. The camaraderie between bands of we're all in this together and helping each other out, setting each other up with shows, with tours. You brought us along here, so we're going to bring you along there. Man, it was an awesome time. It was a really awesome time, and it's really encouraging now, 20 years later, to see some of those same character traits in the scene now. Like when we're playing with people who are 20 years younger than us, it's great to see that spirit still in them. Yeah.
Also for people our age to be doing that too. Like I met you and some of your friends when last time the Darling Fire was down there, and we played Monufest and met so many great bands, and we ended up staying with you. So it's like, wow, you can be 40 years old and still get out there and play shows and meet great people and help people out and be helped out. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was great. I mean, man, hanging out with you guys was wonderful that evening. That was a great show.
Oh yeah. So In Transit. Now, before we get to Illusionary, you did an excellent single with one of my favorite artists, Garrett Klon.
Yes. So man, we were lucky enough to have a common friend. Garrett is not only is he an amazing solo artist, but he's also an auxiliary member of a band called Have Gun Will Travel.
Yeah, I see he's down there a lot playing in that band. I've seen that on his social media.
Quite a bit. And actually, to bring everything full circle, when I tell you that I was, hanging out on a porch, meeting some new friends, and they played me NoFX, that was Matt and Danny Burke from Have Gun Will Travel. And I ended up being in a band with those guys for several years, a punk band called June. And we're all still close friends to this day, all the time, hang out all the time, talk all the time. And so me being so dear friends with the guys in Have Gun, naturally, I got to spend a lot of time with Garrett over the last like 10 years now. I guess he's been part of it. So we've gotten to become just really great friends. He's an absolutely amazing human being. And so when we were recording our first full length, there was a song we recorded called Sanitized and Canonized that kind of had a call and response set up. And I was like, man, it would make my life to have Garrett sing this. So I reached out to him and I'm like, hey, what would you think about joining us on the song? And he was instantly like, absolutely, man. I'd be stoked to. So getting to, sit in the studio and watch the singer from Texas Is the Reason singing your song into the mic with you and joining on your song was, man, that's just an experience we'll never forget. And I'm so grateful to Garrett for doing that. And he's still a wonderful friend and an awesome human being.
Yeah. Texas Is the Reason were a huge band for me, like a real coming of age band for me from age 18 until like, I don't know, now. But all the music he's done. Yeah, like all the music he's done, I've followed over the years, and he's great. What happens? Do you just give him like the part and say like here, or do you let him run with it? How does it work?
I kind of said like, hey, here's some lyrics I wrote. Here's a melody line I was thinking, but you're Garrett. You do whatever you want, man. Like just riff on it. You want to go one way or another way with it, you do it. And he did, and he kind of spun it a little and just put his signature on it. And I mean, every time I hear that voice coming across the song, I just get goosebumps. We're so proud of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can all agree that like, do you know who you are? And Sunny Day Real Estate's Diary, like so many of these albums just were completely life-changing for us around that time in our lives.
Oh, big time. Big time. So we have Illusionary now, the new EP.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now, listen, everybody has to go listen to it. That's number one. We'll add a track to our playlist, and you heard a little bit of a snippet before this discussion with Ben here. But tell us about the record. When did you record it, and is there like an overall theme behind it?
There is actually. We spent all last year recording it ourselves. It was the very first time we did recording ourselves. And as we got into the writing process and we're going through things. It wasn't intentional, but by about the third song, the guys are really gracious about letting me write the lyrics and letting me pick the subject matter. Of course, whatever the subject matter of any song is, I kind of run it past everybody in the band and say, hey, here's where I'm thinking of going with the song. Here's what I'm thinking of talking about, because any sort of message this band conveys, there's 5 people in this band, and whatever we say is not just the opinion of the singer. It needs to be the opinion of every single person in that band.
So do they actually ask you about that? Do they care?
I think so. I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but I always want to give them the option anyways. Like I want whatever we say to be, unified. And we decided early on that's how we would do things, and that's just how we've always run. The 5 of us are absolutely a democracy, and it runs really well. I mean, I don't know if we've ever had a single argument in 5 years.
That really?
Yeah. I mean, we just love each other. We're brothers. We've gone through a lot of life stuff together that has nothing to do with music. It's made us all a lot closer.
I love that. You're beating the odds.
Yeah. As we were writing it, I felt like a certain theme was starting to glue together. So I kind of sat down with everybody and said, hey, like, I know we're just doing an EP, but why don't we make this a concept EP? And why don't we have a theme kind of going through everything? And the theme ended up being in the EP, like, what are some infallibilities in our life or perpetuals in our life that you thought were unchangeable and unquestionable and never moving? And like, what if those things that we've been led to believe our entire life weren't actually as safe or secure or honest or true as we were led to believe? And so every song on the album kind of looks at a different, cornerstone of life that, we just took for granted because we were just told that's the way it was, and kind of worked through it all. So that's kind of where the album title came from, is just, everything isn't quite what it seems if you take the time to look at it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something I think about too, and something I was thinking about recently, because when you're young, everything is like big and new and exciting, and you think like people are out to help each other or everything's going to be okay. And then you get older and it's like you see how the world really is, and you're like, oh no. Oh no.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
What do you have coming up this year? Do we have shows planned? Do we have any tours planned? Tell us about it.
We actually just finished playing a slew of shows since the EP got released. Like we really, hit it hard, and we're playing all over the place. And we just finished our last show of that, quote unquote run last week. So we're going to take the next, 6 weeks, because we've kind of started writing, and we've got some nits and bits of things we've been working on for the next EP, whenever that is. So we're taking like about 6 weeks off just to work on some audio sketches that we've been working on and just haven't had enough time because we've been so busy playing shows. And then we'll be swinging back into regular shows in the fall. I think starting with the show you're very familiar with, we'll be playing ManuFest on October 18th and 19th.
Nice.
And setting up some other shows too. We'll be playing the Florida Underground Fest in Orlando as well. We're super stoked about that. But yeah, for the moment, for the next 6 weeks, we're actually going to be kind of going back into the woodshed and working on some new stuff. We're excited with the direction it's going, and it's an evolution of the last EP and kind of taking it a little bit further, and we're excited about it.
And you guys recorded Illusionary yourself?
We did. Our bass player is an incredibly gifted producer. You know how everybody has something that they just zero in on and obsess on, and he is an absolutely prolific audio engineer. He's so good. He spends hours and hours and hours learning every little thing he can learn. And so when it came time to doing this album, this EP, and we were thinking about, which studio and how we were going to do it, he begged, hey, give me a shot. Let me try doing it ourselves. Let's try doing it ourselves. So the first song we recorded was Nesting Dolls. And when we got done with it, we all sat back and listened to it and were absolutely floored. And we're like, Matt, like, you're amazing. You are really gifted at this. So we're like, you know what? We are doing this ourselves. We're going to do this ourselves. And we went through it, and we're super happy with how it came out.
Yeah, because the production is incredible. So this gentleman must be very, very good. And I even remember when I was down there, I think the Darling Fire, some of them heard some of it, and they're like, wow, like, it's self-recorded, and it just sounds amazing. Because, you know how, like, when I hear self-recorded, sometimes I'm like, uh-oh. But you guys nailed it.
Oh, I think Geronimo and Matt went into a corner together and just started geeking about audio interfaces for like the next 30 minutes, because they were like trading notes like, well, what are you working on and how are you doing it? And I'm like, well, there both of those guys go. We'll see them in about an hour.
Yeah, because Geronimo's good at it too. The demos that the Darling Fire record are amazing sounding too. I wish I could do that.
Yeah. I'm with you, man. I wish I could. I at least appreciate that we've got somebody that can.
Exactly.
No, and wait. Now I want to throw this back to you. You guys just had your first show last night. What at Area 140? How did it go?
It went awesome. There was a few minor hiccups, but first show, minor technical stuff, but it went really well. There was some great friends there. I learned a lot, and I'll be ready for the next one. So I'm very, very, very happy how things went. That's also my first time officially fronting a band live.
Oh man, I'm so stoked. I saw some of the footage, and I was just over the moon happy to be watching you play that. Yeah, you're always going to have glitches, right? It's just how are you going to ride out the glitches? And at least you can be like, well, I got that first show under my belt. I got those first glitches under my belt. Like now I can take a deep breath and I won't be so anxious on the second show, right?
Exactly. This is what I do. I make a few mistakes. I beat myself up for like 6 hours, and then I'm like, oh no, everything was bad. And then I get over that, and then I'm like, no, this was good. And then I just move on. It's like a whole thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, your second show lineup is going to be no slouch of a lineup either, man. Wow.
Yeah, I'm glad we got the warm-up show in, and that second one is going to be really fun. So I'm excited. But listen, everybody, here's what I want you to do. Go check out In Transit. All the music is up on the streaming service that you listen to, and definitely check out Illusionary. It just came out in April this past month, and I love it. And Ben, it was great to meet you down there. I'm sure I'll be back down again. And then if you're up here, let me know. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show.
Can't wait to see you guys again. Thank you so much for having us. We're so grateful.